So welcome and thank you for coming. I know Vicki has been here before, and you guys, this is your first time, right? Have you heard like anything about zero waste or have any impressions of it? Or just kind of curious? Curious? All right. Well, we went over kind of like a little intro thing at the first meeting about what exactly zero waste is. But basically, it's just making like small little changes. And the ultimate goal is always to make zero waste. But with our system, how everything is set up, you can't really do that because you can't buy everything package free and you can't infinitely recycle all materials. So our goal with this series is to just kind of make small changes and those add up and feel good about those changes. So at this meeting, we're going to be talking about buying habits and zero waste on the go. So doing things kind of outside just your home that can help you reduce waste. And we've been kind of following along with this book, which you guys have now. And it's 101 Ways to Go Zero Waste with Catherine Kellogg. And I personally like it a lot because she just has like very simple tips, and the book is super easy to read because it's very short sections and you can just like read 5 or 10 a day and you already have some good knowledge behind you. So these are her tips from this section that we're focusing on today. And I think that was chapters 5, 6, and 7 maybe. So Vicki, did you have anything that you thought in particular stood out or anything that didn't seem like you'd be able to do or things that you already do?
Oh, all of the above.
Yeah.
But
I didn't mean to put you on the spot either. You can pass.
I already use some things. I use jars a lot to store food and stuff in.
Yeah.
And not just mason jars, although I use some of those. But all kinds of jars. Any kind of jar I empty out, I save.
Yeah.
The jar and the lid and use them. I think that's one thing. I even have used them for my drinking glasses, like that too. But stuff keeps better in them for one thing.
Yeah.
And I like that very much. You use them in the microwave for another thing. That's really nice. If you're taking something for lunch or whatever. So that's something I already do. Probably for me the toughest is getting myself to part with stuff.
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably have that same problem, getting rid of stuff, thinning everything out. But we're going to talk about ways that make that a little bit easier. But yeah, these were the tips for this section. So you guys have the book, so you can just read them whenever. But it was focusing on basically simplifying your home, so not having a bunch of stuff and focusing more on like experiences and people and time rather than just collecting a bunch of stuff. And then she also had tips for being a more responsible consumer, so doing things like buying secondhand or just not buying things that you don't need. And then she was also talking about like going outside of the home and things you can do in the office or at school. So lots of good tips. And we'll go over some more helpful information that kind of relates to the topics that were in these chapters. So I wanted to start off with going over a little bit about consumerism. So obviously the main idea is that the more you bring in and buy and have in your house, the more waste you're ultimately going to produce, because if you have a bunch of stuff, eventually you're probably going to throw it away. So this is a short little video. It's about 20 minutes, but we're just going to watch like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of it. And it just kind of outlines how our system works right now with a linear economy, whereas zero waste tries to go for a circular economy. So in a circular economy, everything would be recycled and reused and repaired, whereas in a linear economy, you buy it, you use it, and you throw it away. So we'll watch a few minutes of this.
Obsessed with mine. In fact, I got a little obsessed with all my stuff. Have you ever wondered where all the stuff we buy comes from and where it goes when we throw it out? I couldn't stop wondering about that, so I looked it up. And what the textbook said is that stuff extraction to production to distribution to consumption to disposal. All together, it's called the materials economy. Well, I looked into it a little bit more. In fact, I spent 10 years traveling the world, tracking where our stuff comes from and where it goes. And you know what I found out? That is not the whole story. There is a lot missing from this explanation. For one thing, this system looks like it's fine. No problem. But the truth is, it's a system in crisis. And the reason it's a system in crisis is it's a linear system and we live on a finite planet. And you cannot run a linear system on a finite planet indefinitely. Every step along the way, this system is interacting with the real world. In real life, it's not happening on a blank white page. It's interacting with societies, cultures, economies, the environment. And all along the way, it's bumping up against limits. Limits we don't see here because the diagram is incomplete. So let's go back through. Let's fill in some of the blanks and see what's missing. Well, one of the most important things that's missing is people. Yes, people. People live and work all along this system. And some people in this system matter a little more than others. Some have a little more say. Who are they? Well, let's start with the government. Now, my friends tell me I should use a tank to symbolize the government, and that's true in many countries and increasingly in our own. After all, more than 50% of our federal tax money is now going to the military. But I'm using a person to symbolize the government because I hold true to the vision and values. The government should be of the people, by the people, for the people. It's the government's job to watch out for us, to take care of us. That's their job. Then along came the corporation. Now the reason the corporation looks bigger than the government is that the corporation is bigger than the government. Of the 100 largest economies on Earth now, 51 are corporations. And as the corporation has grown in size and power, we've seen a little change in the government where they're a little more concerned in making sure everything's working out for those guys than for us. Okay, so let's see what else is missing from this picture. We'll start with extraction, which is a fancy word for natural resource exploitation, which is a fancy word for trashing the planet. What this looks like is we chop down the trees, we blow up mountains to get the metals inside, we use up all the water, and we wipe out the animals. So here, we are running up against our first limit. We are running out of resources. We are using too much stuff. Now, I know this can be hard to hear, but it's the truth, so we've got to deal with it. In the past 3 decades alone, 1/3 of the planet's natural resource base has been consumed. Gone. We are cutting and mining and hauling and trashing the place so fast that we're undermining the planet's very ability for people to live here. Where I live, in the United States, we have less than 4% of our original forests left. 40% of the waterways have become undrinkable. And our problem is not just that we're using too much stuff, but we're using more than our share. We have 5% of the world's population, but we're using 30% of the world's resources and creating 30% of the world's waste. If everybody consumed at US rates, we would need 3 to 5 planets. And you know what? We've only got one.
So I just like that because she kind of goes through and shows exactly how it's a linear model. And she goes more in depth with that kind of stuff, but I don't want to make you sit here and watch a whole 20-minute video. So I will send it in the links when we're after the meeting today, and I'll make sure you get to see the whole thing if you want to. But there's one other part that I like to show. So has anyone ever heard of the terms either planned obsolescence or perceived obsolescence? Yeah, well, we're going to learn about it, so.
President Eisenhower's Council of Economic Advisors chairman said that the American economy's ultimate purpose is to produce more consumer goods. More consumer goods? Our ultimate purpose? Not provide health care or education or safe transportation or sustainability or justice? Consumer goods? How did they get us to jump on board this program so enthusiastically? Well, 2 of their most effective strategies are planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is another word for designed for the dump. It means they actually make stuff to be useless as quickly as possible, so we'll chuck it and buy a new one. It's obvious with things like plastic bags and coffee cups, but now it's even big stuff. Mops, DVDs, cameras, barbecues, even everything. Even computers. Have you noticed that when you buy a computer now, curious about this, so I opened up a big desktop computer to see what was inside. And I found out that the piece that changes each year is just a tiny little piece in the corner. But you can't just change that one piece because each new version is a different shape. So you gotta chuck the whole thing and buy a new one. So I was reading industrial design journals from the 1950s when planned obsolescence was really catching on. These designers are so open about it. They actually discuss how fast can they make stuff break that still leaves the consumer having enough faith in the product to go out and buy another one. It was so intentional. But stuff cannot break fast enough to keep this arrow afloat. So there's also perceived obsolescence. Now, perceived obsolescence convinces us to throw away stuff that is still perfectly useful. How do they do that? Well, they change the way the stuff looks. So if you bought your stuff a couple of years ago, everyone can tell that you haven't contributed to this arrow recently. And since the way we demonstrate our value is contributing to this arrow, it can be embarrassing. Like, I've had the same fat white computer monitor on my desk for 5 years. My coworker just got a new computer. She has a flat, shiny, sleek monitor. It matches her computer, it matches her phone, even her pen stand. She looks like she's driving at Spaceship Central, and I look like I'm on a washing machine on my desk. Fashion is another prime example of this. Have you ever wondered why women's shoe heels go from fat one year to skinny the next to fat to skinny? It's not because there's some debate about which heel structure is the most healthy for women's feet. It's because wearing fat heels in a skinny heel year shows everybody that you haven't contributed to that arrow as recently, so you're not as valuable as that person in skinny heels next to you, or more likely in some ad. It's to keep us buying new shoes.
All right, so I think that's just kind of helpful and seeing like that the system is basically set up so that you're always wanting to buy more, even when you don't need to. And I think cell phones are like a prime example of the planned obsolescence because you update, they slow down, and then you get the next one. And it could be perfectly fine if you kept reusing it, but they just want you to keep buying. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about consumerism and how buying things isn't always the best option, we're going to talk a little bit about tips for going for a more minimalist lifestyle. And our author is Catherine Kellogg, but this is Bea Johnson, and she's another big person in the zero waste movement. And in her book, she kind of goes through each section of her house and she asks herself these questions when she's cleaning out and deciding if she needs to keep something or not. So things like, does it work or does she use it regularly? And one that I like is it worth my time cleaning and maintaining? Because a lot of times you just have to dust around stuff or you have to keep trying to fix something, and maybe it would be better if you just didn't have it in the first place. So those are a helpful list of questions that can kind of help you get rid of certain things that you may not want to keep around your house. It may make it easier to part with things when you declutter. And I will send those questions too in the resource email so you have them. But just in general, it kind of comes down to, do I really need this to function? And then once you do declutter, you don't want to just throw everything in the trash because that would be counterproductive to the zero waste movement. So in the book, it discusses a little bit about the hierarchy of donations. And it starts off with, if you have things you don't want, maybe you can check with friends or people in your community who could use them instead. So like maybe if you have a toddler that's outgrown some of their clothes, there might be one of your neighbors that could use that, instead of just sending it to Goodwill all the time. And then the next thing that she suggests is trying to sell some items that maybe you can't find a person to rehome it to. So there's always that option on places like Facebook Marketplace, or if you know somebody who's willing to buy it. And the next step would be to donate it wisely. And what she means by that is it's not always great to just send everything to Goodwill or Salvation Army, because if you send it to a more specific charity, it's more likely to be found by someone who actually needs it. Like if you donate a bike that maybe doesn't work, but it could be fixable. If you donate to a bike shop, they might be able to fix it and then someone would buy it. Whereas if it's at Goodwill, it might just get thrown out. And the next step would be to recycle if you absolutely can't rehome it. And then trash would be the ultimate end to something if you can't fix it or find someone who could use it. And going off of that, there's something called the Buy Nothing Project. It's started by two women in 2013. So they were actually friends and they went to a beach with their kids and they noticed all this plastic pollution out in the environment and they hated it, and they kind of just hated that there is so much consumerism in our society. So they came up with the Buy Nothing Project, which is exactly what it sounds like. The goal is that you don't have to buy anything new because you can always go to friends or community members that may have it and would be willing to give it to you. So it's on their website, they call it a hyperlocal gift economy. And usually the groups are on Facebook. They came out with an app recently, but I don't think many people have transitioned to it. They're still on Facebook groups for the most part. But it is super helpful because you just either post an ask, a give, or gratitude. So if you're looking for something like maybe you need a whisk, but you only need it for a day or something, you could post on there and just say, does anyone have a whisk that I can borrow? And then you don't have to go and buy one from the store, which would then have to be replaced with another one and just perpetuate the system. So I have a short video clip that CBS Mornings did on Buy Nothing groups that just gives a little bit of background and kind of gets at the heart of what it's about. Had anyone ever heard of Buy Nothing before?
Not really in that context, but I have seen
Yeah.
stuff like that.
It's a,
In the Elkhart group on Facebook,
yeah,
somebody was looking for something and they asked for it and they're like, yeah, I have it.
yeah.
So that was like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah, it's super helpful. And Elkhart does have one if you guys live in Elkhart. If you don't live in Elkhart, you can always just type into Facebook whatever the name of your city or town is and Buy Nothing. And if there is one, it should pop up. And if there's not one, you could always start one.
There are several garage sale Facebooks out
Yeah.
there in this area, from this area. You can usually find a lot of things you're looking for, or find people who take what you got off your hands.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, it's very good for decluttering too, because you might have something and think, well, I don't really want this anymore. And if you post it on Buy Nothing, there might be 10 people who want it. So I have found it very helpful for cleaning out my house.
For many people, decluttering is a popular way to mark the beginning of a new year. That's me. But instead of tossing or donating unwanted items, a growing number of Americans are first offering them to their neighbors for free. It's part of the Buy Nothing Project, and the membership is exploding nationwide. Janet Shamlian went to the Woodlands, Texas to find out how this movement is offering far more than just giveaways.
Jordan Cheatham is stopping at a neighbor's home to drop off a fondue pot she's never used. The mom of three found a taker for it on the local Buy Nothing Facebook group she helps run.
Last 6 months, what have you given? Clothes, shoes, books, dishes. Let me see, a couple pieces of furniture.
People post photos of what they're giving away on a neighborhood Buy Nothing Facebook group or through the Buy Nothing app.
Earrings, propane, it runs the gamut. Really, you will find it all here.
Members can also ask for something they need. Everything is donated with no strings attached. Trading, bartering, buying, or selling, not allowed. Friends Liesl Clark and Rebecca Rockefeller started the Buy Nothing movement in 2013.
I think we originally were thinking, okay, we can all offer up what we'd like to give in this hyper-local gift economy and try to solve that question of, do we have too much in our homes? Can we share our bounty?
They didn't realize then what's apparent now. It's about more than decluttering and economic need.
I have to say, in the last year and a half, I've made so many, probably
Jordan has received things like this lamp, a dresser, art for her wall, these chairs, and a table. But perhaps the most important gifts came when her daughter was born in October 2020. Jordan had an emergency C-section. She posted a desperate plea in her Buy Nothing group. Formula? Question mark. Baby is not doing well on breast milk. The response overwhelmed her.
When I got home, my front porch and inside was full of formula. I had like 2 or 3 months worth of supply from at least 15 people. It really shows that, you're never alone. It's okay to ask for something and, be loved on by people.
Buy Nothing has spread to almost 7,000 communities across more than 40 countries. The pandemic fueled a spike in membership. More than 1.5 million people joined. And the number taking part in Buy Nothing groups now tops 5 million worldwide.
Are the Buy Nothing groups on the internet one of the last kind corners?
Sometimes it feels like that to me. And I think because in a Buy Nothing community, you know that you're speaking literally to your neighbors. With record inflation and the stresses of the pandemic, Buy Nothing became for some a financial and emotional lifeline.
It really brings joy to others, but honestly brings more joy to yourself, helping others, and it's good to receive too, and build a community. It is really worth doing.
For CBS Mornings, Janet Shemley, The Woodlands, Texas.
Story, Janet's family.
Price is right. It feels great.
So I think that is just like a great resource because one, you're not buying anything, so you're not participating in consumerism. And also, it's just a great way to help out your neighbors and meet your neighbors in the first place and just make connections and kind of get to know everybody. So most towns have a group, but like I said, if you don't, you can always start one. And people will post just about anything on there. There's someone in my group from New Carlisle. She had some kind of medication delivered, and it was in like styrofoam packaging, and it had like cooler packs in it. And I think she was just gonna throw it away if no one wanted it, but a lot of people said, hey, I can use that. So now it's not going to the landfill. So it's a good solution. And then for this, if you really need to buy something, or if you really need like a blender maybe, if you are into smoothies, this is kind of the hierarchy of finding it. So the first and best thing you could do would be to modify something you already have, because that's the most zero waste solution. If you already have it, you don't have to buy anything. If you can't modify something, maybe you could borrow it from somebody. You could always post it on the Buy Nothing group or see if a family member or friend has it. If that doesn't work, you could always look to find it secondhand, because at least that way you're not taking it off a store shelf where it's just going to be replaced with another item. And then if you can't find it secondhand necessarily, you could try and find it somewhere locally so that you're supporting a small local business and you're reducing your emissions because it didn't have to be trucked in across the country. And if that doesn't work, finding an ethical company that maybe does some sustainability efforts, or worst case scenario, you have to buy it brand new, but just make sure that it's high quality so it lasts a long time and it's not going to break and you'll have to replace it in another year or so. And here I just kind of gathered some resources for buying things secondhand. So there's always Goodwill and Salvation Army. That's kind of the go-to for most people. The Habitat for Humanity Restore, there's one in Elkhart and there's one in South Bend. That is a great place to look if you're looking for secondhand furniture or like household items. They have lamps, a bunch of different kinds of things, carpets. You can always look at resale and consignment shops. Amazon.com even, you can just click the little used filter. That's what I do when I want to buy a book. I see if they have a used option before I have to buy it new. And they usually do. And there's always eBay, Craigslist, other online places, Facebook Marketplace, community swaps, and community networks, kind of like Buy Nothing, but maybe you might barter and trade. And then garage and estate sales are always good options too. And buying secondhand saves a lot of money, so that's another perk. if you do buy something new, you can be on the lookout for some of these certifications. So consider where the product came from, maybe who made it, how it was made, see if the company does any sustainable efforts. Some companies will kind of do something called greenwashing, where they try to make it sound like they are good for the environment and really they're not. So like I think a lot of cleaners do that, where it says like green cleaner, all natural, and it's not really. Or they put a green lid on it so it looks like it's environmentally friendly. So you want to avoid that, but you do want to look for places that have certain certifications. So I've got a couple examples up there. B certified corporations, they try to be like extra transparent, they treat their workers well. Cradle to Cradle, it's kind of intended to be like, the idea is you make the product, but then it can be reused or repaired. It's not just going straight to the landfill. So those are good options if you are buying new. And then remember the first R whenever you're buying things. So Bea Johnson has her 5 R's of zero waste, which you can see over there on the poster. So the first thing you want to do is refuse things you don't need. Next step would be to reduce the things that you do need, so you're not consuming as much. Reuse what you can, recycle, and then rot, which would be composting. So you just kind of follow those steps, and then hopefully you end up with zero waste. So when you are shopping, just remember to refuse what you don't need and consider more experiences and focusing on people and time instead of things. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and focus on zero waste on the go, so things outside of the home that you can do. And one really good tip that I have found and that Catherine mentioned in the book is keeping like a car kit available to you. So you have those things just kind of with you all the time. So you're never in a situation where it's like, oh, I have to take this plastic straw because I have no other option. So just kind of getting in the habit of remembering to bring certain things with you, like tote bags to the grocery store, which can be frustrating if you forget them, but if you keep them in your car, they're right there. And bringing like a coffee cup if you want to go out and get coffee sometime, some kind of Tupperware container if you get leftovers at a restaurant, and water bottle, cloth napkin, things like that. And tips for eating out and going zero waste. You can always refuse a straw. Just order what you think you're actually going to eat. You may not want to get huge portions because then if you don't have anything to take it home with, you either have to take a styrofoam box or you just have to waste it. And if you do have leftovers, you can bring your own container. Bring your own utensils if they only have disposable cutlery, and only take as many napkins as you actually need. My dad always did that when I was younger. He would take like a stack of napkins and he never used them all. He'd use like 2. So just taking what you only need. And then consider bringing your own drink if you go somewhere like McDonald's or Burger King, because a lot of times those cups don't end up in the recycling and the lids can't be recycled. And in the workplace and office, you can minimize printing or print on one-sided paper already. Use only the supplies that you really need to use. Always remember to recycle and make sure other people are kind of recycling too. Pack your lunches so you don't have to go out and get takeout. If you can, implement a compost system and encourage people to take advantage of it. Carpool if you have coworkers that live near you, and then discussing your sustainable habits with your coworkers is great too. Like if you bring a beeswax wrap, which is a reusable food storage thing, someone might say, hey, what's that? And then